Welcome to the Apex Intergame Show, where we're going to have high level discussions about intergame topics as well as topics related to relationships, dating, and sex. I am your host, Paul from Apex Mindset, and we're going to have a great topic for today. My friend Glenn is not producing today. Unfortunately, he had some things to do, and I wanted to knock out version 2 of this. We just had some technical difficulties on Tuesday, and the topic is good and people liked it, and I want to just kind of get it out there, at least recorded and on the channel. If you miss it live, oh well. And that way you guys will have the discussion there for you, help broaden your understanding about how women select guys. All right, and what types of guys women are selecting to sleep with. And this is a good topic for both men and women, because a lot of women, you know, find themselves in situations where they get, where they go home with a guy and then they question, why did I do that? Was that really a good choice for me? Right. And also happens they even get in relationships with those guys and they question that. So this will help women understand themselves who are willing to listen, you know what I mean? But it'll help you guys as well, help you guys understand the dating marketplace just a little bit better. I'm actually moderating my own chat so I can see what you guys say versus my normal show where I can't see anything. And I am doing great, by the way. Thank you for asking, AJ. You guys got questions, throw it in the chat. I'm here to answer for you. It's a Friday, so we're chillaxed. Do want a couple announcements, though. All right. Want to announce this is really cool, and I really think you should get on it. If you're actually trying to make yourself better, you're not. Most of you guys who are watching my material are, and kudos to that. I know a lot of people who watch stuff in the men's help space aren't actually looking to help themselves. They maybe think they are, but they're really not doing any of the work or not willing to. And then, I hope you come to the other side eventually. But those of you guys who are actually going to do things and do work and actually want to get better, yeah, Alex, thank you, man. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here to help you guys. So I'm passionate about it. So, but I'm passionate about this too. Okay. I'm passionate about actually, not getting into a program or getting into something that'll help you. And I got a really low cost, high value, high reward option for you guys. The link is in the description of the video. It's the Intergame Summit. All right. My friend John is putting on the Intergame Summit. I am one of the keynote presenters for that summit. So it's going to be 5 presenters. I'm going to deliver the first presentation. After the introduction, and John, the host, does his thing and does it really good. He has actually a good presentation plan too. So I'll be right after him. And I'm going to help you guys with identifying the problems. Okay. And having awareness of what you need to actually fix. Because sometimes you want something, like you want to do better with women, or you want to make more money, or, you want to fix something inside of yourself. But, you don't actually know why you're not achieving that thing. All right. You're not aware of those things. It's what you think you might need to do, or what you think is getting in the way might not actually be it. And that's where I'm here to help. And I'm going to go over how to diagnose what the actual problem is, and then how to get awareness of solutions. And then, of course, implementation and fixing those things. So I kind of have a more or less a proprietary method that I use called neurobehavioral conditioning to help fix guys. And it does encompass a lot of things, from conventional therapy into NLP techniques and, communication, persuasion, and mindfulness and meditation, and hypnosis and hypnotherapy. I'm also a hypnotherapist as well. And these are all things, that I do to help guys. And I am getting into also, psychedelic assisted therapies and things like that as well. If you get in on this thing, I'm going to have an offer for those who are in the summit to do some more work on me with me one-on-one, and also do a meetup with me as well, for those who qualify for it. So that is something that if you want to do a meetup and actually do a weekend of mind stuff that'll completely transform you, that's on the table. But it's not a requirement to do that, but that's on the table. That's going to be offered to guys in the program. All right. I won't offer that outside of the program. And it's like $300 to do that, to do the thing, which maybe to some of you that sounds like a lot. It's really not, though. The presenters are really good. All right, so I endorse every one of these guys. I consider them not just my friends, but guys who really have it together. They all do. They all I've seen. We've talked about what we're going to be presenting. I'm excited to see their presentations, actually. And usually I'm too busy to be on like other people's presentations for some of these summits and get-togethers, but I'm going to try to make it a point to be on every single one of these guys, because I just know that it'll benefit me too. All right, so we're all in it together. But the enrollment closes Monday at midnight. Use my link if you're getting this information. Like, if you support my channel, use my link. It just lets the host know that, okay, I actually have people that are interested and came from my audience, right? Or I was a convincing factor, right? So I just like to, I want to track and make sure when I try to get word out that I'm actually, being effective and that people are listening to stuff like this. So anyway, an interesting question, although not related to the topic, but I can answer it, is thoughts on psilocybin with self-hypnosis. So that is a topic that I don't know how well I can breach that one on YouTube, and here's why. Some of my work with psychedelic assisted therapies, although very common now and becoming more common, are still not decriminalized everywhere. And I still do work with the federal government, right? So I don't want to give off any confusion or ideas that I might be doing something illegal by, let's say, federal government standards that would get me in trouble. All right. I won't be doing that. Okay. But there are areas and places where it is not criminalized and I can do it, with, at least I can facilitate it. We'll put it like that. I can be a sober facilitator and use the allowed psychedelics, right, to affect the client. And I've been doing that lately, okay, in places where it's legal and okay for me to do it. And that's what I'm going to be doing more of, because it is tremendous, and I can make a lot of help somebody discover a lot about themselves and help them make a lot of change with those types of medicines. But there's a very certain and specific way to do it. So, you're asking, am I, is it good? I think it is. I mean, I think that there's a lot of promise there needs to be more research done, but I mean, so far, so damn good, right? Like, there's a lot of promise when it comes to MDMA, when it comes to psilocybin. I'm actually, I'm in the process, and I've done ketamine. Okay, so that's also a thing too. Not everything is for everybody. So this would be something, a guy that is, well, if you're in the summit and you ask me this question again, I can answer it more thoroughly a little bit. And if you're in one of my programs, I can tailor, tell you what to expect and what might be good for you to look into, whether I facilitate or don't. For example, things like Ibogaine, and things like ketamine, I won't facilitate that. But there are people that can, and I know a lot about it to help to tell you if it's beneficial or not. Maybe at some point I will do a show and cover all these things over at the Apex Inner Game channel, and do a higher quality video that would, fit that channel and talk about it. But yeah, I don't, it's good. We'll put it that way, but it has to be done appropriately. So my recommendation is that you find a good facilitator that will do it. Don't just do it on your own unless you know what you're doing. Okay. Because I wouldn't say that there is no danger of doing psychedelics, and the danger isn't necessarily like the dangers you have with drug use, addictions and some of those things. That's not what I'm necessarily, worried about. But the thing is with psychedelic therapies, your brain is more open to change through neuroplasticity. And if you're in an environment with bad intentions or the wrong intentions, all you're doing is causing change in the brain more rapidly to mirror that environment and mirror those bad intentions, right? So if you're at a party, let's say doing, LSD or mushrooms, then the environment of a bunch of druggy dirtbags who are doing nothing with their lives and stabbing each other in the back and, have poor values and all that stuff, right? All that does is that environment and those people and all those things get more etched into your mind, right? And so you end up assimilating those habits, thoughts, beliefs, behaviors of a lot of people that that you don't want to necessarily be like, right? And this is why, for example, how come a bunch of drug addicts then that just do just do party drugs all the time, how come they're not the most balanced people in the world, right? Like teaching courses like I am and stuff, right? And really have their shit together. Look, they're not, because their intentions and the environment is not conducive of brain development and success and goal achieving and getting rid of trauma and the things they're trying to accomplish. So you can't just do drugs and expect to be better, is the point. How the environment in which you're doing them and the conditions in which you're doing them, which is going to be a good facilitator, is what's going to help you there. That's what's going to make all the difference, whether it's going to cause long lasting positive change in your life, or whether it's going to be just something that, creates more bad habits and emotions and thoughts and behaviors. Right. So you can't just do drugs and expect to be better. That's the point. All right. You're going to change your brain or make your brain more susceptible to change. You have to feed that brain now with what you want to feed it with, so that you change in the way that you want, in the right direction. And a good facilitator is going to make sure that happens. Okay. So you don't want to just, I don't recommend just going off on your own necessarily and just doing it. I recommend, doing a program from, something, well, get in the inner game healing summit. We'll talk more about programs where you can do these things in a way that makes sense. All right. We'll put it like that. Okay. Yeah. So we got, Alex is psyched for today's subject. Okay. Well, me too. Me too. So here's the thing. It does us good well to try to understand why women choose partners the way that they do. Okay, it's a good thing for us to try to understand, because when you understand how women sort of are wired to work, and of course individual girls are going to have different individual things going on with them. I mean, people are individuals, right? But we also have, the same instincts, though, as far as the animal parts of us. As human beings, we have the same instincts. And so to understand a woman's instinctual drive and to understand it in a way that matches, the complexity of a human being is beneficial to your relationships and beneficial to you attracting women and to having good experiences, right? Now, having a misunderstanding, however, of female nature and those drives, that is actually detrimental to you guys. That's where you guys harm yourselves. And some of the content out there that, the red pill content or black pill content or manosphere content is actually harmful to you guys because they're making broad sweeping generalizations about female nature, and it can put you in a mental framework of, having a very negative or sort of divisive view when it comes to the marketplace and women. That's not, appropriate or realistic. You know what I mean? So, for example, like hypergamy. Hypergamy is a drive. It is the drive that has allowed us to become the dominant species. It really is. So it's not an evil, bad thing. Women selecting mates and trying to select for the most, dominant, survivable genetic option. Okay. And they're selecting for that, the most dominant, survivable genetic option, but also the version of that they can keep, right? Because there's an element of, Cave Stacy still needs to get, be taken care of while she's pregnant, and has to have her babies taken care of through the resources and protection of the man. So, Cave Stacy couldn't just get a job in HR back then and have health care. All right. She relied on the males of the tribe and men to take care of her and her offspring. So it benefited Cave Stacy to have parental investment from the guy. All right. And so she wants to mate with the best guy she can get with. And hopefully that guy is also a guy she can keep. So that's the general concept of hypergamy. But that somehow gets polluted in the internet space into, well, she's always going to go for the Chad. And then she's never, she's just going to dump you for the Chad every time, right? Like she's just going to use you for, and for your resources for this, and that. And then as soon as the Chad comes along, she's going to leave you. That's not exactly how it works. Okay. Not for most women. And there's a number of reasons why. First of all, when we talk about hypergamy as a drive, we're talking about it is subjective. So hypergamy isn't something that she is consciously aware of. It is how her neurochemical systems, and which create those emotions, respond to the stimulus. Okay. What's actually evolved is her responses to stimulus. A girl sees a hot, tall, good looking dude, that creates a stimulus. She gets a response. All right. But the response isn't necessarily always going to be dump my husband and chase after that guy. All right. That's a really one-sided negative framework that's not considering other drives that are, and mating drives that are in play. Hypergamy is not the only drive a woman has. It may be a primary one, but it's not the only one. Okay. So for example, the drive to have social acceptance. Okay. Because women relied on the tribe and to be seen socially as valuable amongst people outside of any relationship she's in. Basically being perceived as the good girl. Okay. Good chimpanzee, I call it. That's a massive drive that sometimes will override the hypergamous one. All right. If she thinks she's going to be ostracized by her community and who she surrounds herself with by dumping somebody or cheating or going with someone else, that's why she won't do that. How come she doesn't just sleep with the super attractive guy on the first date, for example? Well, something a pickup artist called the slut defense. Well, why does slut defense exist? She doesn't want to look like a bad girl, right? So that's one example. You know what I mean? And so there's a number of things that play a role in a woman's mind when she's making mating decisions. And women have sex all the time for reasons that they don't understand a lot of the times, and it has nothing to do with whether this guy's a high value guy. Okay. In fact, I'm going to make the argument here that most of the time when they're having sex with somebody, it is not because he's a high value guy. And it's not because it's the best she can do. And it's because it's an opportunity for her to have sex right now. And the emotions are telling her that this is a safe option and a good option for her right now. All right. And so, because I mean, when you are a guy who is in a position where women are attracted to you and where you have value, and I've been on all a couple of different sides of the social sexual hierarchies I'm going to cover here today. All right. But when you are perceived as that alpha, right? There are women that won't go with you because they're afraid of being able to keep you. They're not confident in themselves. They're not confident in their ability to keep you. And so it actually suits them and their mating imperative to try to reject you or try to make you look like, they're the rejectors of you, so that the guys they can keep or impress are seeing her as higher value. You see what I mean? So in a way, it's like a pre-selection for men, because if she thinks, it went another drive is women do have a natural defense to want to control their emotions in a relationship, because when I say that, I mean a natural defense towards alpha widowing, right? So if a woman sees a guy as too much and she doesn't see herself as someone who could really keep that guy, she's worried that she'll have sex with this guy and have a start a sexual relationship with this guy, and that she'll end up like getting discarded, or he's going to see, he's not going to value her because she doesn't see herself as a valuable enough to keep him. And a lot of times she's right. I hate to say it, but a lot of times she is correct in her assessment. And so then she won't go for that guy because she doesn't want to be hung up on a guy that rejects her like that. And then she knows it's going to crush her feelings, right? And screw up. And then future prospects of guys that would stick around with her, right? Find out that like Super Chad or Super Tyrone was her ex. Well, now she knows that she screws, she compromises her prospects with those other guys that she might actually be able to keep and settle down with. You see what I mean? And so there's some level of understanding of that. So when the anxiety or fear gets too high, she often will blow it with a higher value guy. She'll get in relationships, blow it with him, or she'll just blow it right from the get-go. When you hear a girl say, oh no, he's trouble, or you're trouble, right? When they call you trouble, a lot of times that's the message they're conveying. Why are you trouble? Like, why would it be trouble to get involved with you? Well, what they're saying essentially is they know that they'll get involved with you, have a sexual relationship with you, be completely, head over heels in that situation. Do you know what I mean? Have a really good sexual experience and have a really good, have a lot of emotions that could come with that. And then she won't be able to keep you. And then it's going to like destroy her, her self-esteem, and destroy her, make her crazy. Right. And she knows, I don't want to be made crazy by this person I'm very sure is a player and very sure I won't be able to keep. And so they oftentimes will, psych themselves out of going with that guy. Now, of course, the alphas don't notice because they have abundance of women. They just, but it stands to reason, right? Like how come the high value whatever guy that you guys have this meme of, how come he just never gets rejected? How come every girl doesn't just sleep with him? How come they're not standing in line outside of his house? If hypergamy was the only drive, why aren't girls just standing in line outside of super high value guy's house? You know what I mean? Just waiting to get accepted or rejected, waiting their turn. Okay. It's not really how it works, is it? And the reason for that is because there are other drives in play. And you guys need to understand that, though, because sometimes you guys, it doesn't work out with a woman. Sometimes she cheats on you. Sometimes, you get rejected or whatever. You guys who have binary thinking start to get low self-esteem and beat yourself up and get angry, because you're not the alpha and she must have went with the alpha. Like, you guys get caught up in this type of thinking, and it like tears you apart. And of course the internet will play along with that, because if I want more subscribers than I do more rapidly, I'll put out more videos that stimulate your anxiety but don't give you any solutions at all to the problem. You know what I mean? So if I sit here and tell you guys like she picked a Chad because whatever, you're the beta, like you guys are gonna feel bad about yourselves, and that's gonna cause you to click on my shit more. All right. People click on things that are negative, that are threatening, and that are attacking to their self-esteem. They want to watch more of that. It's things that fuel your anxiety. It's natural. It's like watching an accident, right? I mean, our brains are designed to look for the danger or the threat. And therefore, this is why we're a bad news sells, where good news doesn't sell as much, right? People are naturally inclined to look towards things that stimulate negative thoughts and anxiety, because, in our past, I mean, that helped us avoid those things. But unfortunately, with media, we are, filling our head with those things. And so you guys are filling your heads with a lot of content that says, well, when this girl didn't go for you, she didn't, she did this to you, did that to you. It's because you're not high value enough, or you're beta, or you're this or that. Now sometimes your game might have sucked. Sometimes maybe you do need to make yourself better. In fact, most of the time you do. But that doesn't mean that those decisions were just because the other guy is better than you. A lot of times it has nothing to do with that at all. A lot of times there's things going on. There are things going on in her head. Another thing too, how about familiarity? So people have a tendency to go with what's familiar and comfortable with them. So that means a hot girl who grew up with, let's say, an alcoholic or a drug user could sabotage a relationship with you in favor of the drug user or alcoholic. Does that mean the alcoholic or the drug user was more alpha than you? No, she just was more familiar with that, and felt actually more comfortable with that guy who was the douchebag, right? And did not feel comfortable with somebody who was able to offer her a much better life. Her own inner game, okay, her inner game, her self-esteem, how she sees herself, puts her in with an abuser, puts her in with the drug addict instead, puts her, you know what I mean? And girls who, work on themselves and have some wisdom and make good decisions for themselves will break out of those patterns, and go with, choose to be with somebody who's higher value. But a lot of girls don't do that. A lot of girls are, too intimidated by the idea of rejection. See, because rejection to a woman is actually even worse when we talk about existential threats. Rejection to a female could have worse outcomes than that of a male. Like, as males, we have an internal instinctual fear for rejection, because in smaller hunter-gatherer tribes, if a man was rejected by one of the females, that meant all the females were probably going to reject him. So, he didn't have that social proof, that pre-selection is a powerful factor, because, and it goes back to those tribes. When a girl saw a guy as valuable, it's like the high school experience, right? Tyler, that all the little cheerleaders and volleyball players want to bang, right? Who's really a dork, but, and socially awkward, but shows up to the parties and brings weed. So all the girls want to bang Tyler when they're in high school, because they don't see anything different. It's pre-selection in a small environment, right? Well, that's how the hunter-gatherer tribes were, right? So that's why rejection is such a powerful feeling for a lot of guys, and guys have to do things to overcome that, because it signals that you're not mateable. When one girl rejects you, you feel like all the women are going to reject you. Somewhere in your chimp brain says that, but reality is it's of course not true. Especially with a global sexual marketplace, you can get rejected endless amounts of times and still get pretty women. There's no correlation with that, but our brains are not evolved to see it that way, right? And so that's why we have that powerful fear of rejection. Well, for women, it's an even more powerful fear, in a sense that the consequences are even greater, which is that they could be saddled with children that nobody wants. And now her and her children are a resource drain. And being a resource drain and not being seen as a good girl, maybe for that tribe, she gets left behind, right? And if she can't assimilate to another tribe, or she's not going to survive on her own, she's dead, and her kids are dead, right? So social ostracization and rejection to a woman as a more powerful threat. This is why women generally don't approach men, and why women are more afraid of rejection, right? Because that instinctual drive is signals a bigger threat than even for most men. And so, yeah, that's it. That's why women, in fear of rejection, even rejection in the relationship later. This is why women don't like to take accountability for their faults in relationships, and they blame it all on the guy. The drive is to try to look like the good girl. Being rejected, being broken up with, or even if they have to break up with a guy because they, for whatever reason, it's a failure on their part. It's a sexual marketplace failure, right? And women don't want to be seen as a failure to the outside world. That's a threat to them. And, when they don't want to be seen as a reproductive failure, right? And so drives a lot of these behaviors, why they don't take the accountability a lot of times, right? Why they try to make the guy look like the bad guy. And also why they, pre-reject guys who are good options. And we're not talking just the beta males, right? And why they would lean into a guy that's really a toxic guy, but fits their comfort level because of the environments they're used to. Why would they do that? Because the comfort level, even in environments they're used to, she feels more powerful there. And like she has more of a propensity for succeeding, in that environment. So if she's around a bunch of losers who are, doing nothing with their lives, living off the state, talking about woke shit, drinking, doing drugs, her family's the same thing. Everybody's insane. If that's her environment, she feels powerful there, and that's why she's there. She's not there because she feels, even though it's a terrible environment, and even though it brings her a lot of heartache, a lot of pain, a lot of problems, but that's the end result, that she's not associating with that environment. She might associate that pain and problem with herself. Okay. But she associates herself as having power there. Believe it or not, even a girl who is, going with the guy that's verbally abusive or something all the time, right? If she's used to verbal abuse, even though, she doesn't feel powerful when she's being abused, being with a guy in that and being with that dynamic actually makes her feel more powerful because she's used to that. The comfort level is there. In other words, like some of you guys are probably confused about this concept. So in other words, like, what's worse, being verbally abused, but you're used to that, or having a great guy who knows how to handle conflict pretty well, isn't going to verbally abuse you, but then rejects you because you're not good enough for him, right? You see what I mean? Like, it's worse for her to be in her chimp brain, all right, her mammalian brain, her drives and stuff are looking at it as a worse consequence to be with good guy who's got his shit together and is awesome, because when that guy rejects her because she's not capable of being a good partner to him, that is a bigger blow to her self-esteem and sends a bigger message to the social environment that she's not worthwhile. But if she gets into the relationship with a verbally abusive guy, then she can cry about it all the time and say how abused she is. And then everyone can now come to the rescue. You see what I mean? And now she's got power in that environment through the perception of victimization. A lot of times girls who are used to verbally abusive guys will even get in it with a guy who's not verbally abusive, or and they'll say that he is. They'll play the victim. When like a normal conflict or argument, maybe things get a little heated, she'll say that, oh, he's verbally abusing me. Because he had emotion, because it was heated, you know what I mean? Because of her behavior. Like it's just insane what people will do. So there's a lot of reasons why women sabotage themselves. And there's a lot of those things have everything to do with them and nothing to do with you as the guy. And so you need to be able to separate those two. I'm not saying that there aren't things that you can't, you couldn't do differently when things fail. There always is something you can do differently, but you guys need to get away from shaming yourself and having guilt over these things, because even if you are the person who made some mistakes, shame and guilt doesn't lead to change. Shame and guilt actually leads to repeating the same behaviors. All right. Accountability is what causes you to change. Accountability is where you recognize your faults, take responsibility, you see the situation for what it is, to include the other person's contribution, negative and positive to the situation. And then you make yourself better so you don't do those things again, and you make your amends for anyone you've wronged as best as you can. That's accountability. Whereas guilt and shame assumes that you're the same person who would make those same mistakes again. So you've harmed somebody irreparably in your mind, which is not true because it's always repairable. But you've harmed somebody irreparably in your mind, and now you're the same person who would do it again. And that's why you feel shame. Okay. So don't do that and don't get caught in that trap. And that's kind of the reason I'm doing this video. And that's why it's important to understand these things and to understand why women select, because when things happen, you guys tend to put it on yourselves and feel shame over it, or you get angry with her, one or the other, and you get angry with women in general, and that's not so good. I'll take a peek at the chat. I know, Jared, I got to get with you at some point. I've just been like slammed with my own stuff. Jared's got his own channel though. Yeah, don't worry, bro. I got that issue as well. It's called the shadow ban for me. I'm not sure what your deal is, but Jared's got some good videos, especially when it comes to Max. I love your videos on maximizing your Instagram. If you want to put a link to your channel in my chat, bro, you can. So anyway, yeah, if you do any kind of like super chats or whatever, those are helpful for the algorithms. It's not so much the money, but just FYI for any questions. Let's get into now social sexual hierarchy. So, you had the alpha beta thing. So what does the alpha beta thing come from? The alpha beta thing, I blame Rational Male for that one. Rollo Tomasi. It's a good model though. I'm not actually faulting it for him, because what he did was he took the concept from evolutionary psychology of strategic pluralism. Okay. And I don't know if Buss came up with the concept of strategic pluralism or if it was just sort of developed, but strategic pluralism is the idea, and we see it in the animal kingdom, and I do believe we see it in humans, where, okay, a girl wants a guy who is the most alpha guy, who is also willing to take care of her and her offspring. However, in absence of being able to get that guy that satisfies all of her alpha needs and would be willing to take care of her, she'll often settle with the guy who will take care of her and then look to the alpha guy to breed with. All right. And so you do see that, right? This is where the girls find themselves cheating, mate switching, different things that is in play. And this is because this goes back to how paternal certainty was a real problem back in the day, right? We didn't have paternity tests back in the day. So she could bang the genetic alpha and then make the beta guy who's taking care of her believe it's her kid. Or, in the tribes, it was, because everyone was same race and all that. You didn't know who was who as easily. So in the tribes, it was the village took care of it, took care of the kid, which prevented, infanticide and prevented, a lot of the intertribal conflict over jealousy, right? But then when you channelize into harems, guys owned those girls. The reason why for harems was paternal certainty. High resources men had 2 to 3 to 4 different wives and possibly concubines on top of that they would impregnate. And then lower status men didn't have any mating options at all. That's our harem structure. And 80% of the world, even today, allows for a harem structure. And some of there are countries out there that have that structure well in play, like Afghanistan, for example. All right. So, I mean, that's where that exists from. But women will go for that high value, high status man as much as they can. But in absence of being able to keep that guy around, they'll settle for the beta, but they'll be sexually desiring, whether they mate switch or not, or whether they leave or whether they try to go for him or cheat or not. They'll be sexually desiring someone who is a better genetic option for breeding or mating, right? And so that's strategic pluralism, the idea of alpha, alpha fucks, beta bucks, right? That whole little meme, all right? And that's where that comes from. But now on that hypothesis or theory, Buss has more changed his theory into a mate switching theory, where he believes that, the reason women would switch mates isn't because of wanting to be with an alpha, or the reason why a woman would cheat, for example, is not just because the guy's an alpha, but the reason why is because she's setting up her next mate. I believe in both. I don't think it's one or the other. I think that, the mate switching hypothesis is very true. We know women do that. They keep orbiters around. They keep guys around that they would go with if it doesn't work with their current partner. Not acceptable, by the way. Don't accept that in your relationships, guys, but that's what women will do or try to do if a boundary isn't set with that. And this is why they have Kevin from sales that they do lunch with and the friend guy, and all of a sudden they start developing something for, and then they line things up. And if they don't outright cheat, it allows themselves to transfer emotions to the new guy and pull away those emotions from the current partner, which makes her less emotionally invested in the current partner. And then when the time comes and she feels like it's the right time and when it's most beneficial to her and of usually least benefit to her partner, she institutes the breakup, switches to the new guy, and tries to do it in such a way where she won't be socially ostracized. So either making that guy wait a few weeks before they start, hanging out and banging and stuff, or possibly making that guy, keep it under wraps and don't say anything. I don't want to look like a bad person, right? So that's mate switching in action. And I think it's all of it. I think that they do all of those things, and it depends on the girl, depends on the situation. I think that the strategic pluralism theory is valid. I don't think it's invalidated with mate switching. I think that mate switching is also a valid theory as well. So anyway, what does that all boil down to though? Well, I mean, we see that women make mating selections for lots of reasons. They bang for lots of reasons. Although genetically, although their primal drive makes them more attracted to the best guy that they could get with, there are a lot of things that obstruct them from getting that guy. A lot of things, out in the mating marketplace that have nothing to do with them, but a lot of things internal and in their own head. And that's where women need to pay attention, because women are sabotaging their abilities to have good relationships and deferring to other mating strategies and going with other guys and doing other things that sabotage her ability to have her dream situation with the guy. And that's common. And nowadays it gets social support, you know, to do that, to do those behaviors, right? Where they're mate switching and whatever, where they're doing things that would violate their ability to keep the high value guy. And these chicks don't even know, man. Like I'll tell you, like, because I'll be seeing somebody or whatever, and you know, her friends will be jealous or whatever it is. But her friends are like ratchet, you know, maybe. And not even, they could be really super attractive, but ratchet in their behavior. And they can't conceptualize or perceive why a guy like me, like why they can't get a guy like me, let's say, you know, or a guy that's higher value, whatever. They can't conceptualize it. They can't perceive it. Like they think, you know, they think it's all, you know, they blame the men, they blame them all, and they assume, they'll make a lot of assumptions about a high value guy with good morals and values too. Like they'll make a lot of assumptions about that guy that are negative assumptions to give themselves excuse and rationalization for why they can't get that guy. What they're not recognizing is the reason they can't get that guy is because they have shitty, ratchet, terrible behavior. And a guy with self-esteem and who's worth a shit is going to dump them before it even gets to several dates. You know what I mean? They're going to be disqualified because a guy with options of beautiful women isn't going to put up with certain kinds of behaviors from some of these girls, right? And this is like your sugar daddy type girls, your OnlyFans type girls, and I'm not saying everyone, okay, but a lot of them, right? Ones that use their bodies and use their sexuality for transactional reasons. In other words, I'm going to try to get what I can, you know, from the sexual marketplace and use my sexuality as a transaction. Girls who act with that behavior and have that model, girls who won't do things for their man, girls who are not feminine, girls, and these young girls nowadays, let me tell you, these young 20 something girls, they go with these guys their own age, they're total pussies, you know, every single one of them, and they control the relationship, they control the situation. These guys are emotional, weak, crying little babies. They may look good, they might have like some height, you know what I mean? They might, you know, have some physical to them. Some of them might have some physicality to them. Some of them might even go to the gym, you know, to get some beach muscle. But like they're whiny, cry little bitches. Like they're little fucking babies. And these girls just run the relationship and just tell them what to do and just cheat on them. They don't care. And these guys are, you know, they're frustrated, punch a drywall Kyle guy, you know, play video games all day guy. You know, they're just these losers, and these girls will have these guys around. Like that's what's going on with a lot of these girls. And then a guy who with his shit together, who's better looking, has more money, has more of a prognosis of life, and has better relationship skills, better in the bedroom, like better across the board than these little douchebags. And it could be a guy, you know, actually, like there's a couple of guys, like, you know, that could be your own age, you know, in their early 20s that are like that. Could be an older guy, you know, could be a guy in his late 20s, 30s, even 40s, right? That they're attracted to. He's got all the shit going on and they can't understand, like they disqualify themselves because they talk shit or whatever. They can't keep that guy. They couldn't keep that guy for 5 fucking minutes, and they can't perceive or understand why that is. And it makes me laugh because I watch it, and I'm just chill with everybody. I'm just cool with everybody. I'm an observer of people, you know, and I have different groups and circles that I'll be around. I could go, you know, like when I go to film, I have some film that'll come out. You guys will see soon. But I got a new video guy, and he's out in Toronto. When I go visit those guys, I'm around, you know, young ass girls, early 20s, right? Like doing club stuff. Most of them are like that. And I just observe, I see what it's like, you know what I mean? Then of course, you know, I'm around girls who are my age. I'm around girls who are, you know, somewhere between that. I'm around women in the mid to late 20s. Like I've been around and I observe what's going on. I see what happens. And the young ones right now, especially, like, It's a fucking joke. And then even the older ones too, it's like they disqualify themselves too, and they talk shit about guys who have more value than they do because they know they can't keep that guy, you know. And and not only that, they can't understand why they can't keep the guy. Like they don't really understand it or know, you know. So then they don't like it. They don't accept it. You know, a 38-year-old woman who's out of shape, you know, who won't fucking do anything to make herself look better, can't understand why a guy of value is going to want her. And you know, and well, if she does understand it, she's mad about it a lot of times. Not everyone, but she's mad about it. She's angry at the guy. She's angry at the world. She's angry at men for men naturally wanting what's attractive to them and having it not being some banged up, you know, girl who doesn't lady now who doesn't take care of herself, who tries to party like a 21-year-old, you know, who on top of it is angry at the world. So just doesn't act feminine, acts bitchy. Like these women don't understand. Like they're like clueless. And then the guy with options, he just picks a hotter girl. Like he doesn't care. Like I don't give a shit when I'm, you know, girls think that. So the ones that are like, oh, like, you know, whatever, they also are trying to get with me too at the same time. It's both. And they'll never understand why I would never allow some of these girls into a long-term situation with me, that I have more resources to protect, to include just my time, and that I have no time for a ratchet ass girl who treats men like shit. Like they can't understand that. And so then they blame me. I must be bad guy, right? Or the guys, men out there, they must be terrible. It would be comical if it wasn't sad. You know what I mean? It would be comical if it wasn't sad. And so, my man, John, what's up, dude? I did our announcements for the intergame healing already in the beginning. So modern chicks are pretty damaged and can't keep what man they want. Yeah, well, this is true. They can't keep them. And then they sit there and go, oh, well, I'm sorry. I can't be what you want me to be. Like, no, bitch, like just do the behavior. Just act fucking different. Just go work on yourself, you know, and act differently and start making progress. Like, oh, I'm just am what I am, you know, like fuck out of here, you know. Oh man, that's another thing. I'm a victim, you know. It's just like whatever, you know, whatever. And so it's sad and it's struggling, you know what I mean? Mike Malone. Is this Big Mike from my military buddy Mike? I might be. The fact that I have been single my whole life proves that women are not always attracted to or hook with losers. LOL. Oh, whatever. So I just say something self-deprecating, I'm gonna fucking kill you. I'm gonna go to your house and punch you in the face anytime you say something self-deprecating. Don't talk about yourself in a bad way, Mike. You're the man. All right, you're the shit, and you need to start acting like it. Well, I'm being serious, man. All right, you are my friend, Mike. Yeah, you need to act like you're the man because you are, bro. Honestly, you really are. So, you know, and that self-deprecating stuff, that's going to be why, you know what I mean? You get rejected and you really shouldn't, you know what I mean? But, all right. So let's go into now social sexual hierarchy. So it's not just alpha beta. All right. It's really not. That's binary thinking, really, because when you look at it, women are not selecting the top tier men all the time. Well, let me rephrase. A lot of women are going for the top tier men, but not every woman is selecting the top tier man when she has an opportunity to select him. So if hypergamy was the only drive and alpha was the only thing that she was going for, and beta would just be what she settled with, right? And of course, my friends who use that model, they don't use it incorrectly. You know, they say these are generalizations for conversations. These are placeholder terms. So they got that caveat, and it's totally fine. You know, it makes sense with the way that they talk about it. But sometimes the way you guys interpret things, you get into a binary, illogical thinking, and you think that that's all there is, and that's, you know. So if a woman doesn't, because here's the message: then if a woman doesn't select you, then you must not be alpha, right? And that's not necessarily true. You know, women don't notice the best options for them all the time. And I think about it, you're gonna let some dumb girl. I really mean it, because no offense to my lady listeners, but you guys are dumb when it comes to mate selection. And if you don't think you are, unless you married the first guy you had sex with and everything's been going wonderful, if that's not you, then you've been dumb before. Okay, I've been dumb before. All of us have. But you know, you you select guys to sleep with that you shouldn't, and you know it. So they're not making, and they don't know why they do it. Like, that's the definition of dumb: doing things and not knowing why they do it and having them be bad things to do. Duh, I'm an idiot. Okay, that's definite by description. There, that's dumb, right? That's pretty dumb. So you're gonna let some dumb girl be the origin of, or the predominant opinion on your self-esteem and how you should feel about yourself, and whether or not you're alpha or not, like whether or not some dumb chick or a series of dumb chicks selected you or not. That's the determining factor as to whether or not you're a high tier man or alpha guy. And now you have to, you know, putz around and cry and say you're a beta. Listen, what it's that's not what determines it. Okay, your behavior and how you react to those rejections has more to do whether or not you're more of an alpha or a beta than their actual rejections. All right, so let's go into the hierarchy. So Vox Day also had a hierarchy, but my problem with, you know, that's where you had the whole sigma male, the gamma male, and all that bullshit. That's somewhat useful. I don't like it. I don't find it that useful. I feel like that's just trying to give categories for guys to identify with in order to, you know, everyone wants, all the guys want to be the alpha or the sigma. And so basically, sigma male is just guys who want to feel like alphas, but are not, you know, really alphas. So then they have a category to say that they're not beta. I mean, but I don't see much use of these categories, to be honest. The Vox Day version of it, that social observation, um, it doesn't have much use in the sexual marketplace because it doesn't really fully describe why women select, you know, the guys that they select or don't select other guys. So it doesn't really fully describe that, you know. The whole purpose of a social sexual hierarchy is to describe the hierarchy of sexual selection, right? And I don't think that the Vox model does. So I'm going to present a different model to you. But I do need to present, before I forget, something a little different, and to understand why alpha male, the term, you know, the idea of an alpha is not just a placeholder term, really. And it's not an unscientific term either. There's a drive by people with certain social agendas who want to believe that everyone out there is equal. And it makes them uncomfortable. The idea that, you know, we're not equal, really. Granted, we should have equal opportunity, I believe, you know, but our outcomes are not going to be equal down to the individual. Our talents, skills, and abilities are not equal, right? Our genetic capabilities, even down to attractiveness, is not equal. And so, people, that's the reality, is there is no actual equality. But people who are comfortable with that don't like the idea of there being alpha males. All right. And so then they try to pick it apart and say it's not scientific. And then down to the actual scientists themselves in academia, because of that, you know, we'll say that kind of woke narrative pressuring academia. You have scientists who have, down to like Francis DeWaal, who was really the first person to use the term alpha male, applying it to humans and primates. right? From it previously being used just by Lorenz, I think it was Conrad Lorenz, if I'm not mistaken, with animals and specifically the wolves, right? So got transferred. The idea was really used when looking at wolves, the alpha male, of the pack, of the wolf pack, and that whole thing, and that got transferred into primates, and then we're a version of primates. And so there's, Francis De Waal wrote books applying chimpanzee, psychology into human beings and social dynamics with humans, and made some very, very good observations. But he backtracked on the alpha male thing because he doesn't want to be embarrassed academically by wokeists. Look, there are alpha males. We know that. We know that there are that there are certain males that show up and they dominate socially and physically and in every other way than other males, and we know that. If we pretend like that's not true, then we're also being idiots, right? Like, we're not being objective, we're not being scientific. So what gives these people grounds to try to say that alpha males don't exist? What gives them grounds for that is that they're not understanding the social dynamic in which the human alpha operates in versus, let's say, gorillas or chimps. And so that's what's different. So there's two things that are fundamentally different that make us human uniquely. All right. One is our social circle has multi dimensions to it, whereas a gorilla or chimpanzee has a one-dimensional social circle. So what do I mean? That means that the gorilla isn't going to his engineering job during the day, and then going to his family at night, and then going to the bar to meet up with the guys later, right? Or watch the game or whatever. Those would be three different social circles a human being would interact in, with a different social hierarchy in those circles. Whereas gorillas just operate in their gorilla tribe in a one-dimensional environment. And same with wolves, same with chimpanzees, all that. So there's a one-dimensional environment for animals, whereas for us as humans, we have multi-dimensions. So this leads to the concept of contextual alpha. You could be the alpha male in one context and then be more somewhere in the middle of the hierarchy in another context, or even on the lower end. Okay. Now there are certain traits, behaviors, and so forth, and physical characteristics that would make someone more or less generally a dominant guy. Okay. Which would make him more likely to be the contextual alpha in these different social circles. But and there's guys who are much weaker who are less likely to be the dominant guy in any social circle because of their characteristics and their behaviors. That being said, though, it's still contextual for human beings. That's what makes us different. That's one thing. Thing number two is that because of our evolved human brain, we have an ability to build alliances for common purposes or goals. This means two alpha males can be friends, something you can't have in a one-dimensional environment with gorillas and chimpanzees, for example. In the chimpanzee hierarchy, and even bonobos, nobody is really an equal. Okay, there's all somewhere on the hierarchy. In dog training, when bringing dogs together in a family, that was the model that was presented to me by the dog behaviors, that no, there is no equal. Dogs can coexist and everything and be a part of the family, but there has to be a recognition of where they are in that dominance hierarchy, and that needs to be respected a bit, or it won't work. You know what I mean? And so, like, that's different with animals, but with human beings, you can get a group of alpha males together for a common goal, and everybody gets along. Everybody works together because we are capable of using, our human brains to solve problems, not just defer to violence and coercion and dominance, right? Whereas animals don't have that human brain, so they have to defer to, dominance, coercion, violence in order to be in charge and the lead. You see what I mean? And so you can have dominant it can be tough, sometimes, a bunch of type A's in a room, but you can have dominant personalities, alphas in a room, all solving problems together. And that's fundamentally now different than, you know, chimpanzees or whatever. So it's contextual, and you could have alliances. That's what makes human beings different. But to say that alphas don't exist and blah, blah, blah is unscientific, it's untrue. And it's a lot of bullshit. Unfortunately, the academic world is afraid to go against that or push against that now because of the narratives that are out there. I see a super chat, so let me look at it and answer it. Paul, how would you see signs of sexual mesmerization in a girl to determine you are her best? Maybe she has signs of genuine desire, but not too often mesmerized per se. And you're saying first year. The quick answer to that, ain't an Apex Mindset show without the Bonobo shout out. Damn straight. The quick answer to that is you're looking for kind of a shocked or odd after effect from a sexual experience with you where she clearly has not experienced that before. You're looking for signs. Think about how somebody would act if they experienced something very physically intense that they've never experienced before. Okay, think about what their body language would be, what their eyes would look like. Think about, what they might say. Okay, think about what their breath pattern might be like. Think about, just think about how they would react if they experience something physically intense and it was a new experience for them. Like they've never experienced that. Let's say getting off a roller coaster, for example, that was a huge, crazy drop of a roller coaster, and they don't go to roller coasters all the time. You know what I mean? Like, for example, right? Or a near death experience, even, or, a really euphoric, like happy experience, bungee jumping, right? Or something like that, like get them really excited and elevated, and how they would react when that's over with. Right? What would they talk about? What would they say? Oh, that was crazy. Holy shit, right? That if she's doing that reaction after sexual experience with you, you've had that mesmerization. If she is getting entranced during the sexual experience and then having repeated orgasms, that you're having that effect on her. Because it requires her to be able to shut her brain off and be in the moment for those types of things to happen. So, not the topic of this show, but that hopefully answers your question. That's what you're looking for. If you're not getting that, don't ego protect and try to justify why you are or whatever. Just accept it and then figure out what to do about that. All right. And figure out how to analyze it. And so that would be something, really my year-long program, which is, so I'm still accepting candidates for, you really want to get dialed in on that kind of stuff. That's a program for that. You know what I mean? Really get into the seduction aspect and being able to read women and being able to create those emotions for your partner. That's what my year-long program can help you with. So I'll point you there as one possible solution. If it's specifically this relationship, and you really want some help, see if you can get on my calendar for a one-on-one or something like that. If you've been with this chick for a year and you're doubting things, it could be your inner game too. Like if you're finding that you have all of these insecure feelings about your relationship, but this happens a lot. Like the signs are all there that everything's fine, but you're not fine because you got shit going on up in here. If that's the case, lower cost than my year-long program, just click that link to the Inner Game Healing Summit and let's get your inner game in order so that at least when you assess the situation with your girl, you're doing it from a place of objectivity and not clouded by your own inner game problems. That's really critical, actually. So hopefully that answers for you. All right. Now I got a screen share. So let's look at different categories. We're going to take the social sexual hierarchy past. I'll do a screen share here and we're going to take it past. Yeah, we'll do that. So here we are. We're going to take it past the alpha beta thing. Okay. So we're going to go past this. All right. We're going to look at, 4 categories I want you guys to think about when it comes to, let me slideshow that shit. 4 categories to think about when it comes to how women select, not just 2, and not Vox Day's social sexual hierarchy that doesn't help you at all when it comes to what women are thinking. All right, so let's look at category 1. Category 1 is the alpha male. Okay, got some pictures to represent that. All right, that's the guy that checks all the blocks. Okay, that's the guy that every woman would secretly desire or overtly desire if they're not ego protecting. Okay. That's a guy who usually has good physical shape. He doesn't have to be quite as lean and jacked as this guy in this picture, but he's got decent physical capabilities. You know what I mean? He could be tall, and usually is tall, but not always. All right. I've met some alpha guys who are short, 5'2", 5'3". I like to use my friend Justin Mark, pickup artist out in Toronto. He is absolutely an alpha guy, and he is like 5 foot. I think he's actually 5'5" though, so he's not as short as I thought he was. He's just a really smaller guy, maybe 5'4". So yeah, short dude, really small, like maybe 120 pounds, super alpha. So it doesn't always have to be physical. It's the whole package. It's the whole package. The whole package of that man illustrates that he will supply a girl with every need she could ever want. Okay. That's sexual needs. That's emotional needs. That's security and resources. That's paternal or being ability and willingness to take care of children. And that's legacy, meaning willingness to keep her around or ability to do that. Now, alpha might not want to keep that girl around. It might pick another girl to keep around, might pick several girls to keep around, right? But he has an ability to do it. And that's the point. All right. So like, all of the traits you think of with alpha, that's a guy in that package. Yes, this guy is the predominant thing that a women desire, but it's not the predominant thing that women sleep with. Women are not sleeping with alphas most of the time, actually. Okay. Part of the reason is numbers. There's only so many alphas compared to women. So an interesting, concept put up by Carl of the gender nomics books, if he's has those for sale. I don't know. I haven't seen Carl in a long time. So Carl stated on one of our Rule Zero episodes that although, using the saying from evolutionary psychology that eggs are expensive and sperm is cheap. Okay. The idea that eggs, the female egg, the ability to get pregnant is more valuable because she can only have so many babies, right? Versus sperm, which can just be replicated by anybody all the time. And so, although, yes, eggs are expensive, putting women at the selecting point when it comes to mating, and sperm is cheap, alpha seed is more expensive than the eggs. And I'm paraphrasing, but it was an interesting thought, and it's very, very true. The alpha male seed is more valuable because there's less of this guy, okay, than there are women out there that are willing to get pregnant by this guy. So there's an abundance of guys who are low value that want access to sex that women don't want to have sex with. But there's very few alpha males compared to women. And so these guys do get selection with women, even though they unselect a lot of women. And even though women take themselves out of the selection process with these guys, they have access. So the guy has access. And status, by the way, is really just a promise of the ability to take care of those needs for a girl. That's what that is. It's a promise of it. You know, when you have status, you're illustrating that I am the man that could take care of everything you would want as a chick, right? Though it may not be true, okay? But that's what it illustrates, and that's why status is so attractive. You know, it's the outward appearance of being able to take care of all this stuff, whether it's actually true or not true. And so women are attracted to that, no question about it. But women disqualify themselves from keeping this or having this or even going for this all the time. For every girl that would go, and I should have put like high status rock star in here too, right? Rock stars, they're also alpha. So there's a lot of different types of alphas. I just kind of put a couple of types in here. But you guys know enough about the alpha archetype probably, so I don't need to get in the weeds with it anyway. But, you know, the rock star, when girls stand in line and leave their boyfriends and husbands to go sleep with the lead singer, the drummer, that scenario, for every girl that's standing in that line, there's, you know, handfuls of girls that would never stand in that line. You know what I mean? So you got to keep that in mind. All right. It's not like a guy who's the alpha just can get every girl, because he can't and he doesn't. And guys who are not lying or capping, who are in that position, will tell you that. All right. So, like, women do disqualify this. This is not the guy that they choose a lot, because he also represents an unsafe option for their, you know, possibly for them. You know, he could represent an unsafe option for them. In fact, an idea of them being alpha widowed, being rejected, all those things. And meeting this guy, women get nervous. You know, they get nervous and they sometimes select themselves out. They think too hard about it. Sometimes girls won't sleep with this guy on the first date because they're nervous and they're scared of looking bad and being rejected by him, so versus a guy that they slept with and didn't care about. Right. So that's what you have to understand, is that this idea that this guy walks around and can steal your girl all day is actually false. All right. He is the most desirable in the hierarchy, but a lot of women, due to their background, upbringing, and how they think, don't think that they can get this guy, and they won't even try. They would actually rather cap. They would rather pretend like they don't want this guy to begin with and go with some dirtbag, because that makes them appear of higher status, appear of higher level of attractiveness to the guys they can keep. And those guys, if she had gone and slept with alpha guy, the guys that she could keep, which she'd be less likely to keep now, because those guys would be intimidated. You know what I mean? And they would know that there's no way that they could top, all right, that guy. Next in the hierarchy is the beta male. All right. I don't know if these guys are really beta males or not. So if somebody's looking at their picture on that I found on the internet going, hey, wait a second, that's me on the left, and then get mad at me, don't fucking get mad at me. Okay. These guys look beta. I don't know what to tell you. It's the posturing. And this guy is not necessarily, but I just sort of put him in there because he looks beta. And I'll explain why. But yeah, it's the posture, beta male postures, nothing wrong with having a smile actually, but there's an alpha way to do it and not an alpha way to do it. And it's just sort of, that's just what they represent. You know what I mean? But it really has to do with behavior more than looks. These are the nice guys. These are the guys that don't stand up for themselves. Women sleep with these guys though. Okay. Women try to settle down with these guys. All right, I have this guy here with the headband because just his dress and body posture, and he looks like, emotionally maybe not as calibrated here. He could be an alpha guy, I don't know, but in the posturing here, you'll see guys like this, the skinny guys, they tatted themselves up, a lot of them are leftists and wokies just because that's what they tend to be. But I mean, they could be, you're right, it's not political. They could be right too, on the right, could be conservatives, who knows. But yeah, they're usually, they're trying to play the alpha part, but they're just not. They're emotionally uncontrolled. These are the young guys I mentioned earlier in the show. No emotional control, little babies, little bitches, but they'll tat up, they'll like have their little beards, they'll do their little cool like headband here, but they have like no emotional calibration, no emotional self-control, and they're failing in life. They're not doing shit with themselves, right? So, and then they fall apart and whine and bitch when they're with women, and they also create conflicts with women. These are your toxic guys too. A lot of toxic guys who are creating toxic arguments all the time. That's very beta behavior. You know what I mean? And so yeah, so a lot of betas that women sleep with they're not sleeping with them because they create security all the time. We tend to think that the beta male is the nice guy they settle down with because that tends to be true a lot. But sometimes it's the guy that just, makes her, it's really the guy who makes her feel a level of comfort is the beta guy to want to stay with that guy. Okay. But does not stimulate the emotions of desire and making her really want to submit to him sexually, right? So she feels comfort in the relationship with a beta guy, feels like she can control and has control in the relationship without the desire, okay? That without the higher level of desire that she would have for, like, let's say an alpha guy. And these guys cannot provide them with everything, even if they have money. Their behavior demonstrates that they don't make good decisions. They perform weak sexually. They have a weak frame when it comes to protection, when it comes to, leading, right? And even guys who front to pretend they have a strong frame often have a weak frame. They're just frustrated, angry, and more vocal about it. But think about it. If a girl is toxic, all right, that toxic girl, that toxic framework, she's used to being around a bitchy, overly emoting, somewhat emotionally abusive, toxic male who may very much be a beta male. And you guys will confuse that guy with an alpha, but no, he's not. He's, maybe a dirtbag and who's, all in his feelings with some girl, right? And not necessarily a dirtbag. Like betas aren't necessarily dirtbags. They supply security needs though. So whatever enough to supply the needs to make her feel secure. But again, if she's toxic, what makes her feel secure is actually a toxic guy. And so these guys are lower status males, easily controllable. They don't have their own frame usually. Most of them are nice guys, though. Most of them placate. Most of them are nice. Most of them are weak. Well, they're all weak, just to a degree. To what degree they're weak, and that's your beta male. Okay, so we have the alpha, the betas. We kind of know that stuff. Now, here's two other categories you may not have thought about as much. So the third category, and if you saw Tuesday's shows, we talked about it. Third category is your incel. Now, a lot of you guys think of these guys as being the beta, but see, betas actually get laid. They just don't get laid as often as the alphas or as the next category I'm going to talk about. They are scarce. Betas are scarce with women, but they are guys that do date. They do get girls, and girls will settle down with that guy. These are the guys who, come to me a lot of times with relationship problems because they didn't have frame and they were in a beta framework. And of course, we then transform that guy into being the contextual alpha in his life and his relationship. And that's another thing, by the way, is that these categories are behavioral based, right? Some up physical appearance stuff like fat guy with a beard, with a goofy, dirty ass beard, right? Is a common incel, but his lack of access to women, a lack of social calibration causes him to treat his health and his physical life and how he, and causes him to treat how he shows up, right? And his look causes him to look like this, right? But I can take this guy, all right, and have him do a behavioral plan that also involves getting him in shape, also involves getting him to appear differently. And now he don't look like this guy anymore because his inner game changed. He's no longer an incel. He starts getting dates. And now his physical appearance demonstrates that. But guys who don't fuck look like it. All right. A lot of times. All right. Not always, but a lot of times. Okay. So incels are like beta, but that don't get girls at all. You know what I mean? They really have very, very little mating access. Okay. And this is, this goofy mouth open smile is very common for guys that are feminized. Feminized men tend to not do well in the sexual marketplace. All right. But with incels, you have two sides of it. You have the feminized man, and then you have the guy who went his own way because he got sent his own way, right? You have the angry incel. Okay, that this type guy, the Elliot Rogers type, right? He's the dangerous angry incel, angry at women, angry at everybody else, not socially connected, was bullied in school. He's very weak emotionally, but he's very angry about it and very angry about those weaknesses, and therefore is actually a danger to other people. So incels, you got two sides of it. It's on a spectrum. You got the super nice guy who's just unattractive and gross and girls don't want to fuck him. And you have the dangerous guy who's weak but dangerous, right? And so those are your incels. That is a category. That is most men. Most men are incels. Most men are not having the sexual access at all, very much at all with women. And and when they do, it's very sparingly, right? And so most men are leaning towards the incel category. They're not attractive to women. I mean, they've done the studies. 80% of men not attracted to women. Okay. Now, it doesn't mean 80% of men are incels, but probably half. You know what I mean? So there's some unattractive men that do get women more occasionally, but they take long breaks, they and all that. And they're more maybe the betas, right? But incels are not being successful barely at all in the sexual marketplace. Okay. And again, all of these categories can change. All right. Incels aren't noticed. The guy that's not even noticed tends to be the incel. All right. So I'm showing these pictures of potential incel looking characters, but the reality is a girl couldn't tell you what an incel looks like much other than maybe the one that's a threat to her, like a violent type, because, she doesn't even notice him. The guy, when she goes into a bar and there's 80 to 90% of men she doesn't even notice or pay attention to, a lot of those guys, I mean, they could be anybody, and she just doesn't pay attention to them because, attention spans and so forth. But the guys that are consistently never noticed, and that's woman in, woman out, coming into a room, that tends to be your incels, right? And they can't even make themselves be noticed if they wanted to without coming across as strange or creepy or whatever. And it's sad. It's sad. These guys, and this is, if you have this, if you're struggling with this, please interview for my year-long program. And actually, I would say don't even go to my year-long program yet if you're really bad off. Do the Inner Game Healing Summit first and work on your inner game. Get my Alpha Mindset course maybe, and get yourself to a place where you start having a different mindset. And then see if you're a candidate for my year-long program. Because if you're too far gone, like, I can't put you in my year-long program yet. This is why I do the interviews. Myself or Garen would sit down with you for 30 minutes at no cost and figure out where you're at, what you need. And it might not be the year-long program at first. It might be something different. You know what I mean? Just depending on how bad you are, so it depends. But because I want you to be successful, and I know you can be successful. You don't have to be an incel. You don't have to be an incel and justify why you're an incel. Okay, which are some of the more black pill related type channels. Not everybody who's a MGTOW is an incel type, but a lot of them are. Okay, and MGTOW is a generalization. So if I didn't fit your generalization, don't get mad at me. But there are guys that fly under that banner that are on the incel category. Resentful, hateful towards women, a lot of that stuff, very incel-like, right? And so, yeah, that's you. You can fix that. That doesn't have to be you, and it's a miserable way of living your life, all right? But anyway, that's category 3. Women don't notice. Most guys to a girl are non-mateable. Okay. Most guys fit in this category in their minds, at least, even if the guy doesn't really fit in that category, right? And now we got the fourth category, which is the breeder. Okay, the breeder. My favorite category to laugh at. All right. This is, ladies and gentlemen, mostly gentlemen on my channel. Gentlemen, this is who your girls are sleeping with. Okay. Your girls are sleeping with the drug dealer, sleeping with the douchebag, sleeping with the low level pickup guy. All right. Sleeping with the drunk guy at the bar at the end of the night, sleeping with the friend of the friend that, is kind of douchey or whatever, sleeping with Kevin from sales. All right. Sleeping with the frat guy that doesn't have a lot going for them. So these men are not alpha males. They try to LARP, live action role play like alpha males sometimes. Okay, like in the club guy Jersey Shore type looking. That's an old photo and old style, but there are people kind of like that. So you got this style of breeder. You know what I mean? Guy who's geared up to the club, doesn't have shit going for him in life. All right. He's not like my club promoter friends who make, millions of dollars a year. Like, you know what I mean? That would be more of an alpha male. Nope. We're talking like the guy who shows up and, teams up and tries to freak dance a bunch of girls together. That guy, girls sleep with that guy. They do. Here we go. This is the emoting, brooding, weird beard, bro, my dad hates me guy. He's probably deals drugs or whatever, yeah, this guy, you know what I mean? But he stimulates emotions in a girl, he's also fun, and like toxic, drug addicts, they like to go for that guy. He's a guy who's on heroin, this guy. Seriously. A lot of girls bang this guy, man. High school girls, and he's 20, 24. She's 16. This is her boyfriend. It's small town America everywhere. This is who she's banging. You know what I mean? The guy is emotionally unstable, has nothing going for him, practically homeless, but doesn't care about anybody but himself. And those narcissistic traits come across as mirroring some alpha behavior. She sleeps with them. This guy is actually not, I wouldn't consider him a breeder. He just plays one on his YouTube channel really well. This guy actually that's the bro science guy. Dom, some Italian name with an M. Hilarious, by the way. This dude's hilarious, and his channel's hilarious. He's actually pretty awesome. I like him. But dude, he's got a hot girlfriend. He's got money. Like, he's actually an alpha male, okay? But but he plays the breeder douchebag guy really well on his channel. Your frat guy, douchey guy that travels in groups, whatever. That guy, sometimes comes from good family, comes from money, you know what I mean? Wants to flash dad's money around. That guy women sleep with. This guy, maybe, I don't know, maybe he's cool in real life. I don't know who he is, but he's appears like trailer park guy to me, so it could be like that trailer park alpha, could be, we got this guy here, you know what I mean? Like, trying to be an F boy. You're F boys, right? You're fuck boys, right? Right? These are all your breeders, okay? They're kind of losers. And this is who women sleep with most of the time. Why do they sleep with this guy? They sleep with them because there's no consequence in their mind to sleeping with them. And he stimulates some emotion, and he's kind of fun. That's why. And that's the thing that you guys need to understand. You guys get so into this stuff. I'll go back to not sharing and get back to the stream here. You guys get so into this stuff, right? But you forget, like, girls just want to have fun. You know what I mean? And so if they feel like, if they're with an alpha, but that the experience isn't as fun for them because they're too anxious and they're worried about fucking it up and this and that and the other, they're not necessarily sleeping with that guy. But it's the end of the night, they're at a pub, and, kind of douchebag guy comes around who's, he's doing maybe contract construction guy or somebody. Not that he's a bad guy either, but he's a drunk, and an idiot. She sleeps with that guy. That's who she sleeps with. because she's having fun. She wants to have sex. Sex is like pizza, and she doesn't see herself as valuable enough to have, the top notch best pizza in the world, like alpha males. So she's getting hot and readies, you know, and then they'll fit an archetype usually, or a style that makes her comfortable. If she's used to growing up with, the girl that sleeps with a lot of black dudes who are just like player type black dudes, right? That's, most of those guys are not high status alphas any more than white dudes or any other race. It's not a race thing, but I'm just using that as an archetype. I'll sleep with that guy. He's not the high status alpha male black dude. He's just that dude, right? And he's that player, slow level player. She sleeps with that guy, because she feels comfortable there and feels a level of control there. All right. And so remember, with seduction, she's balancing out intense feelings with a feeling of control. And women want to be able to control those intense feelings with a guy that is out of her league or out of her comfort zone. So he could be an alpha dude or even another breeder, but not fitting what she's used to or her comfort zone. Women from bad families will go with guys that are toxic, that represent the bad families they came from, for example. You know what I mean? But they're not going with that guy because he's treating them badly right at first. They're going with that guy because he's fun and doesn't care, right? And so she can have fun and not care. But all of the red flags that would repel a healthier girl doesn't repel her, and she feels comfortable there. Whereas if a guy doesn't have those red flags for that girl, she feels uncomfortable there. You see? So comfort level for that sexual action threshold to go up, that is something that plays a role here, which causes her to sleep with low value men all the time. Because if she's used to being in a lower value environment, not trying to level herself up, right? She sleeps with these lower value breeders because they make her feel good. The guy that signals relationship stuff, like the beta male, that puts her in ahead of having a relationship and gets her into planning and future and blah, 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 right? And then worried about what other people think, all this. The breeder just makes her have fun. The girls just want to have fun, So there's a level of conditioning too involved in that. If she likes the Jersey Shore type guy, right? She's got the crush on Paulie D, which is laughable. I had a girlfriend once that had a crush on that guy, and then she met him. And that crush ended. Nothing happened because he was different, we'll say, on TV. But that was her archetype of douchebags that she would sleep with. Not to say that guy's a douchebag. I don't know what he's like, okay? But the persona, all right, is that of a douchebag. Reality is he's got money and got a lot of stuff, so maybe he's more of an alpha male. But the persona, right, is that of a douchebag. That type of guy. And these guys, drug dealer game, I use that as an example, right? Guys that, hey, want to go to my house and smoke some weed or want to go whatever. They don't have a lot going for them, but they have a ruse. They have a thing that they can offer for fun. They don't have a barrier or self-esteem issue when it comes to escalating sexually. You see what I mean? So like they just, they're not in their heads like the beta males. And they're not intimidating like the alpha males. So women just sleep with these guys. So this is who they're selecting. All right. They're not selecting. They are hypergamously. Well, then how does hypergamy work? Hypergamously, they're attracted more to the top tier guy, but their need to feel safe and comfortable, which is also a drive. Okay. That and the need to have power in their relationships causes them to disqualify themselves. Remember, it's the best guy they can keep, not just the best guy that they can get. And they know they can't keep that alpha. And so they disqualify themselves and they go for a breeder. Because the other part about these breeders is there's no consequence. In other words, there's social consequence, but we've removed that largely in the West. and they're attempting to remove that. Don't shame women for their notch counts, blah, blah, right? That old thing. So yeah, there's less social consequence, but the consequence for sleeping with a breeder really isn't much. If the sex is bad, it's like, oh, well, I just had bad sex. I won't do it again. Who cares? Right? If the sex is decent enough, okay, maybe she'll come back to that guy if she's horny again. But now she doesn't have to get her notches up. She'll return to that guy because of familiarity. But if that guy stops calling her or if she just stops seeing him, it doesn't matter to her. It's fine. Like, she doesn't care. You know what I mean? Most girls are sleeping with that guy and the guy that they don't care about if he calls her back. Most of you guys that actually get laid are this guy. Okay. And it's just the fact, you know what I mean? It's just the way it is. So you have to understand this. You get rejected a lot just because you're not familiar to her, right? You get rejected as a higher value male because she's not comfortable in a sense. And this is where your game needs to tailor. When you can be the fun guy who makes her feel comfortable, but is also high status alpha. Now there's no stopping you, right? Very little stopping you. Okay. But a lot of girls won't have the self-esteem to go for you when you become that higher value guy. And that's it. And so you need to understand that is in play here and not get caught up and get low self-esteem about, girls that are not into you in the same way, whatever it may be. You know what I mean? You can't give a shit about rejection. You got to look at your own behavior, of course, to improve your game, but you can't be emotionally attached to that. All right. One thing about the breeders is they're usually not that emotionally attached to rejections. Okay. They're too, that's one thing that separates them. Sometimes they are, but oftentimes they're really not that much. Right. And they just signaling that douchebag gets people laid. I've been that guy before. I've been the beta male. Early in my life, I've been the breeder and I've been the alpha contextually in my dating life. You know what I mean? I guess technically I've been the incel too, because when I was really, younger, I couldn't get girls to save my life. So I've been all categories. You know what I mean? I've been all 4 categories. And better to be the alpha, let me tell you, because you still have tons of access to women. But, what's preventing you guys from being the alpha, internally and mentally, and at least showing up and elevating and taking yourself to that next level is your inner game. You get caught up in these rejections. You get caught up in the stupid ways that women select. Women selecting loser breeders to sleep with instead of, better options for them. You guys get angry about that. That ends up sliding you into the beta male category or sometimes the incel category if it's really bad. All you have to do is remove that frustration and get your inner game together, and you can probably slide into the alpha category or at least the breeder category and get laid some until you make yourself better, right? And so it's better. I would say it's better to be, don't suggest being a breeder and being a douchebag. I suggest elevating yourself to being more of that contextual alpha. But if you start at breeder, it's a little bit better, maybe a little easier. All right. You don't want to, you really want to strive to be contextually that alpha as much as you can. Wanted to mention, of course, about bonobos since it was mentioned in my chat. You have to understand, although we're not evolved there yet, and you won't be in your lifetime. If you're listening to this, we will not, as human beings, be evolved into full bonobos. But society is pushing with a feminized narrative, and it's also not just the narrative, by the way. The narrative is created by the conditions. The conditions of the world in which we live is creating a bonobo society instead of a chimpanzee one. All right. So just for those of you who missed this history lesson in previous shows, bonobos were once chimpanzees. what made them different, and they're very genetically similar. They're almost the same. And chimps and bonobos are only a few percentage points away from being human beings. Like we look at the genetic, similarities, it's like we're like 96, 97% chimps or bonobos, right? Whichever one. So, and they're identical, like they're not identical genetically, but they're both only the same few percentage points removed from becoming a human being. So without our four-brain thinking human brain, we're either chimps or bonobos. And we're really chimps because we've evolved for thousands of years as a patriarchal society, whereas bonobos are matriarchal. But how did that happen? So what happened was in the Congo, the bonobos, who were once matriarchal, just like chimpanzees, got isolated. So migrating around, finding new territory to find food, the ones that found themselves in the Congo found themselves isolated from predators. So the way that the jungle and the terrain was there, that the normal predators were no longer there. So they didn't have anybody they didn't need to protect themselves anymore from predators. And resources were abundant. So with abundant resources now, fighting the other chimpanzee tribes for territory became less of an issue. So with abundance of resources and no natural predators, no need to protect themselves, the male value of a patriarchal society, why males control that society, is because males are relied upon to bring the resources in and to provide for protection. Remove the need for males to provide protection and bring in resources, and now from a evolutionary perspective, the utility of what was previously male value no longer exists. Now the utility for males is simply labor and breeding, which means that a man is either a breeder or he is an incel or maybe a beta. Okay. That's a bonobo society. When they did the research, they found that, okay, they thought, because of course, with leftist ideology and academia, they thought, oh boy, these bonobos have a lot more sex and they're having sex to solve problems and conflicts. It's just like this utopian dream society of chimps who, just sort of have sexual liberation, right? And then they assumed that the males would be equally mating because equality, right? So they assumed that since it's a utopian thing where everyone's banging, that there would be, more of the males would be responsible for those children, that it wouldn't be this divisive alpha males only have the kids in a bonobo society. What they found was that it was actually worse. Okay. So in chimpanzee tribes, just very much like humans, the top tier males mate. Okay. The alpha male leader mates to everybody, but there are males just below him who end up mating also. Okay. And having children. The lower tier males do not mate at all, have no mating access. And then those lower tier males are trying to fight their way into having mating access, or they die off having never mated. That's the same thing with human beings, by the way. We're a product of only 40% of males in our history. All right. And so with bonobos, they thought more males would be mating because, it was reported that sex, and sexual stimulation and all this was used, for all different reasons socially. Well, as it turns out, it's the women who are just, fingering each other and banging each other and doing all that stuff in bonobo society. It was the women that are directing it. It was the women that were being, we'll say slutty, okay, with no controls over their sluttiness. And when it came to actual having sex and breeding and males having sex, they had sex with a smaller percentage of breeders. So these are the most physically dominant. So the most physically dominant, muscular, more physically capable bonobos are the males, not the women. But they're the males that they can't take over that society. If those physically dominant males try to dominate the tribe using force, they'll be coerced out of it. So in other words, the women will use their sexuality to coerce the weaker males to team up or gang up on that more muscular, stronger male. So all of the alphas have been suppressed and taken out of leadership roles, put into breeder roles. So in bonobo society, you have the guys that women have sex with just to breed, and they can control those men because they're too weak to want to, mentally weak to try to fight their way out of it, although that they're physically strong enough, where they could do damage. So that is where bonobos are at. We are shifting into that as a society. Women are sleeping with breeders more often than anything else because they can control those guys, because the need for male protection and male resources has become less, okay, in our society. Now we're not fully there, and we never will be genetically because of how long it takes to change that aspect of us. Well, we won't be there, I don't think in our lifetime, but that is what you're watching. That's what you're witnessing. Okay. You're witnessing a transference of power from a male driven society into a female led bonobo one. And that prognosis, by the way, is not good for men. It essentially is a prognosis of slavery. Like, women thought that men, were the misogyny of men was bad for women. Well, you ain't seen nothing yet. Wait till women get put in charge. Because that's another myth, too, is that bonobo society is nonviolent. It is not. It's infinitely more violent than humans. They're just less violent than chimps because they're not fighting other tribes. All right. But they're still violent. You know what I mean? They still kill each other just like any other primate does. So just wait. The abuse, the psychological abuse, the all those things, that is what our society is gearing towards. But if you're an alpha male, you can enjoy the decline. If you're a breeder, you can enjoy the decline. Don't just be a breeder, though, because you won't enjoy anything. You'll just sort of, you'll enjoy it for a while, and then you'll be a loser. You'll be a loser male. You'll find yourself in your 30s or 40s with nothing to show for it other than a bunch of notches. And, that's not good. Okay. So don't be a breeder for too long. All right. If you're that guy who's just banging hoes and being that guy, start thinking about your goals and making yourself better and being more the contextual alpha. It's going to be better there. Alpha males will always thrive in our society currently the way it is. And I don't know, all it takes to, by the way, is in another emergency or situation or a war or anything, and everything flips right back into chimpanzee misogyny, not really so much misogyny, but chimpanzee, male driven, patriarchal hierarchies again, because that's where we're genetically wired. That's where female and male polarity exists. Women generally want a more dominant leading man, right? But they want to feel safe with that guy, and that's that balance. Okay. But yeah, so that's why it is. That's why we have breeders. It's not just alphas. It's not just betas. I don't know what the fuck a sigma or gamma is in this equation, because it's really not something in this equation. All right. You have contextual alphas that are alphas within context. When that guy's with that girl and he's the best that she can do, or at least signaling that possibility when he picks her up, gets her on a date, gets her to the bedroom, he's contextually an alpha at that point, right? If she's sleeping with this guy knowing he's a douchebag with nothing going for him, but he's a good time, well, he's effectively a breeder at that point, you see. And if she thinks, oh, this guy's going to maybe be a good dad, good provider, but I don't really know. I'm going to make him wait 3 dates. I just don't know. He's not as sexy as my last boyfriend, that was toxic, right? That's beta guy, right? She doesn't ever notice him at all. That's incel, And so that's some better categories to look at and to be able to sort of see how women are selecting. Because you'll notice when you go out, the chicks that just aren't looking in your direction and going home with some guy, those guys are douchebags, most of them. Every now and then, yeah, of course, alphas get the guys too, get the girls too. So they're alphas that get the girls. But most of these girls are now hooking up with those guys. They couldn't if they wanted to, and if they were able to, they couldn't keep them for very long. So they're hooking up with breeders. So don't get too all upset and in your head if you don't get selected and somebody else does. Just improve your game. Improve your game and lean towards being that alpha and learn from the breeders though. What can you learn from the breeders? How to not give a shit, how to be more attractive, how to, you know, inspire emotions and feelings that make her feel like she's having a good time and having fun, because girls really just want to have fun. You know, a guy who's high status gets, I'll tell you, high status guys get blown out all the fucking time because they show up on dates. They spend a lot of money to try to show her how cool he is. They talk about their job or their work and how much money, they signal all this shit, and they're not having, and all it does is intimidate the girl or make the girl feel like this guy is a fucking loser, and loser even though he has money, right? Because he's basically displaying his insecurity. He's not relaxed. He's not having fun. Instead, go out and have fun. What would you do that was fun? Take her to do that. Doesn't matter if you have $1 million. You know what I mean? Take her to go do something dumb that's fun, that makes her excited and makes her have a good time, makes her laugh. Why do you think sense of humor is so important? Because she just wants to have fun, right? That's what you could learn, is that, and then also signal that there are no consequences that are bad if she decides to sleep with you. You know what I mean? It's not going to turn out badly. And there's different ways to do that, to include, the simple mental framework of, hey, if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. But at least you've had, really good time with somebody who's, you have a really good connection with, and who's a good dude, right? Signaling that right there. So that takes away her, thoughts of it not working out and, well, this guy's an alpha male and I can't keep him, like that undertone that she may not be consciously aware of that's working on in the background. So yeah, so use it to your advantage and don't get hung up on what these girls think about you. All right. They're not selecting good guys. That's not how it works. All right. Most of what they select is a reflection of their fucked up framework. Some girls can step outside of that and date upward far beyond their level. Even though it creates dread for them, some will do that. And that's actually kudos to those girls. That's a testament to their, drive and willingness and ability to try to make themselves better. Right. And I don't mean just transactionally, but I mean just all around. But, most of them though, don't. They fall to their comfort zone and they just want to feel comfortable and feel good. And so if it all boils down to that, you make a girl feel good, make a girl have fun, make a girl, and just be attractive, she's going to go for you, right? If she thinks there's consequence there, if she's worried about, the prognosis afterwards, if she's worried about being able to keep you, if she's intimidated by you, now she might not go with you. Intimidated by you actually is a good thing, but only to a degree. You know what I mean? Intimidated, but not so much so that she blows herself out. So that's what you're going to do. Look at the chats here. Don't be fat. Yep, that's correct. Don't be a fat. All right. Just have, just being lean helps, And so let's see, what do we got? Yes, free Bonobo history lesson. Like and subscribe. Thank you very much. Super chat. Can 36 questions to fall in love and nip switch and emotional and nips and NLP nip and NLP switch the emotions over about one guy to you. Oh, you're talking about taking somebody's girl? Well, yeah. I mean, sure. But, if you go through 36 questions to fall in love, that psychological experiment, like no offense to my autistic listeners, but like an autistic person, then no, it's probably not going to work. All right. Obviously, you don't mean it like that because you're saying NLP, and so you know what you're talking about. I get that, but yes, of course, Um, and I talk about this in my seduction program. It's not so much 36 specific questions. There's nothing magical about those questions. It's really just going 2 or 3 levels deep in your questioning. So instead of just like, oh, where do you work at? You're asking something more deep than that. Like, you know, oh, you do that. Well, wow. What inspired you to get into that? Or is that your dream job? Or is that something you're just doing right now to pay the bills? Well, what's your dream job? Okay. Talking about, for example, the subject of work, I'm now getting into motivations and things that would inspire emotions. And so getting her to answer and talk about those emotions, those things that inspire her emotions, is a more interesting conversation. And then if I'm a good storyteller on top of it and can rope her into a story on topics that are interesting to her that also inspire emotions and in a bit of, you know, yeah, just create that emotional environment. That's what's going to create some attachment. Then throw in authority and compliance, throw in getting, her to investment, which is getting her to participate more, right, in the conversation, but also do things for you. Like, come with me, let's go grab a drink. Or, oh, you're going to grab something. Can you grab me a napkin? Simple things like that, that cause her to invest more. That causes all that whole thing to happen. And of course, your tonality, the way you look at her, the way that you speak, you know what I mean? All of those things, you create a bubble, you and her. Yeah. That bubble takes her away from any other dude. Now, I hope you're not trying to take her away from a solid boyfriend. I don't recommend that, but some other guy who she might hit on or who might be hitting on her, right? Yep, let's look at your second super chat. There we go. All right, I understand the signs, but I'm asking how often would you look for it? All the time, just a few times? I mean, yeah, dude, just you're not going to be like magic every single time, but I mean, if you've done it once or a handful of enough times and she's treating you like somebody who is sexually valuable and important to her, chances are she hasn't had those experiences with other people. And I will say a woman will oftentimes, when she's not trying to use her sexuality to have power and manipulate you, a woman will oftentimes just freely say, I know that lots of guys don't think that women say freely that you're the best lay I've ever had, and mean it, or, say like, that was so intense. I've never had an orgasm like that before, or God, I've had the best orgasms with you. Like, a lot of you guys think women don't freely say that and mean that because you maybe haven't experienced that before or enough times to recognize the difference between a girl saying that and meaning that, and a girl saying that just because she feels pressured to say that because of your insecurity, or she feels like that's what she says all the time to guys, right? Like, there's a definite difference, and you can tell what that difference is based on her body language. And it goes back once again to her having that awe, having that, oh my God, I've never experienced this before reaction to things, and how often will you see that? Well, that's just going to depend on how often, she has the experience of never experiencing that before. But once she starts experiencing it with you, it no longer becomes new anymore, right? So that awe factor won't always be there. But the pleasure will be there, right? You know what I mean? The intense feelings of pleasure will be there, but she'll come to, she will grow accustomed to that, not in a bad way. When she's with you, that actually builds more attachment when she's more accustomed to it, because that means that she sees you as the source of her sexual needs, right? And then not have you would be something where she can't have those feelings and those needs again. And that's a threat. She doesn't want to not have you. So So yeah, I mean, it's just you're just kind of looking for it to happen and looking for her to qualify it to you, and you'll notice, man, like girls will treat you differently when, despite their internal bullshit, when they see you as that sexual best framework, and when they're also capable of that, having the pair bond, right? They're not riddled with attachment issues or riddled with, you know, short-term mating, tendencies and behaviors and habits from their past. Like, women will demonstrate, you know what I mean, that they'll act, and they'll act like it. And you'll be able to tell the difference, and it's a way that they'll qualify to you. It's the way that they'll miss you. The anxiety, not anxiety, but that addictive feeling when they can't be with you and stuff too. And they'll get cranky. They'll get cranky when they can't have sex with you. You know what I mean? Stuff like that. Like, there's a lot of things you'll notice. So hopefully that helps. Well, that'll close the show today. All right. So hopefully that was a better version. We've gone for 2 hours, and hopefully this was clearing up what happened Tuesday. I appreciate you guys logging on and enjoying the program. Let's see, what are we going to talk about next week? Because I have it all laid out. I just don't know. Well, if I can't find it in the next few seconds here, I'm looking at the phone. You'll just have to stay tuned and look for my Instagram and look at the advertisements. Maybe Glenn will do an ad for me. Yeah, because I have all these notes and I'm not sure where. And I'd come up with the topics a while ago, so I got to find it. But yeah. But you guys have till Monday. All right. So I'm going to try to get on again this weekend, maybe just to talk a little bit. But you guys have till Monday to sign up for the Inner Game Healing Summit. All right. So you want to see me there. You want to work on some inner game stuff. Now's the time to do it. It's going to be reissued in 3 months, but it's going to be double the price, I think, or at least increased in cost. I know that. So it's like $295 right now. And then you'll get, by the way, if you get on now, you will be able to, be a part of the Zoom calls for the next quarter and the next quarter. So you get on now, it's the lowest cost and the highest value. Okay. You'll have more access to me and the other experts on the panel. You'll have presentations that you'll get to be a part of throughout the year. So now is your chance. Go click that link. Okay. Don't fuck around, and like, subscribe, and that's it. I'll see you guys next time. Rule Zero tomorrow, by the way. Rule Zero on Ryan Stone's channel. All right. So I'll see you there.